Right now, there's a huge story happening across West Africa, and it's something that's been on the minds of many, especially here in Nigeria. The story that's making waves is about 11 Nigerian soldiers who were detained in Burkina Faso after their plane made an emergency landing in the country's airspace. This incident has been all over the news, and there's a lot of confusion and rumors swirling around, with some reports even suggesting that these soldiers could face life imprisonment. But we need to break it all down and get the real story so we can all understand what's going on. First things first, let's talk about what happened. On the 8th of December 2025, a Nigerian Air Force C-130 military cargo plane was flying through the skies when it encountered a technical issue. Now, anyone who knows anything about air travel understands how serious that can be. The crew knew that they had to land, so they made an emergency diversion to Bobo-Dioulasso, which is the second largest city in Burkina Faso. Now, Burkina Faso's military wasn't exactly happy about this landing. They quickly detained the 11 soldiers who were on board and seized the aircraft. Burkina Faso's government said that the plane had violated their airspace, and that's a big deal in any country, especially when it comes to military aircraft. You can imagine that tensions were high. According to their military, the plane did not have permission to enter their airspace, and that was seen as a violation of their sovereignty. But here's where things get interesting. On the Nigerian side, the military isn't agreeing with Burkina Faso's version of events. The Nigerian Air Force insists that the plane was simply following standard international procedures for an emergency landing. They say the plane wasn't making any unauthorized move. It just had a technical malfunction and had to land at the nearest airstrip, which happened to be in Burkina Faso. Now, I know this is a lot to take in, so if you're following along, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to stay updated as we keep track of how this story develops. So, there's this huge difference between the two countries' accounts of what happened. Burkina Faso is saying that it was an act of aggression, while Nigeria is saying it was a simple emergency. And here's the thing, both countries have their reasons for seeing it this way. Burkina Faso, for its part, has been dealing with a lot of political instability. It's been a part of the alliance of Sahel states, which includes Mali and Niger countries, that recently broke away from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Now, you have to understand that ECOWAS is led by Nigeria, and Nigeria is a key player in the region's peacekeeping operations. So, any conflict between Nigeria and these countries raises red flags. And let me just pause here. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, why would they detain Nigerian soldiers? Why would they make such a big deal out of something that seems like a technical issue? Well, the answer lies in the region's complex political dynamics. The Sahel region, where countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are located, has been experiencing a lot of political upheaval, and military interventions have been a part of the equation. Now, let's talk about the soldiers who were detained. These weren't just any soldiers. They were highly trained members of Nigeria's military, and their mission wasn't to cause trouble or get involved in any military action in Burkina Faso. But for Burkina Faso, their presence in their airspace, at a time when tensions were already high, was a serious concern. And this is where the speculation starts. Some people are wondering if the whole thing was actually more about regional power struggles than it was about the landing itself. But here's where the confusion gets even thicker. Some reports suggested that these soldiers could be facing life imprisonment if they are found guilty of violating Burkina Faso's airspace. That's a pretty heavy accusation to throw around. And if you're like me, you're probably thinking, life imprisonment for a landing caused by a technical issue. At this point, I have to tell you, don't jump to conclusions. The idea of life imprisonment hasn't been confirmed by anyone in an official capacity. In fact, recent updates have shown that the soldiers were released after a few days of negotiation. Yes, they were detained, but they weren't sentenced, and they weren't in prison for long. They were allowed to return to Nigeria.
The release of the 11 Nigerian troops should have closed the chapter. Instead, it opened a far more unsettling one. Their aircraft entered Burkina Faso's airspace without authorization, landed under opaque circumstances, and triggered an immediate military lockdown across the capital. For a region already strained by fractures between ECOWAS and the Sahel states, the timing could not have been more dangerous. Officials later described the landing as a technical emergency, yet military analysts quickly pointed to inconsistencies in the flight path, the troop manifest, and the silence that followed the incident. Inside Burkina Faso's security circles, the key question was never why the plane malfunctioned. It was why it appeared where it did, carrying soldiers whose mission remained unclear. Releasing the troops was not a sign of weakness, it was a strategic decision made after a rapid intelligence assessment and a message to every external power watching West Africa's new alignment take shape. The soldiers returned home, but the doubts, the suspicions, and the geopolitical ripples stayed behind.
The landing of a Nigerian military aircraft in Burkina Faso is raising eyebrows. The government of Captain Ibrahim Traore said the plane was operating in Burkina Faso's airspace without due permission, and it landed on Monday, 8 December, in the southwestern city of Bobo Dioulasso. The Burkinabe authorities said there were 2 crew members and 9 passengers on board, all Nigerian military personnel, and that they have been taken into custody for questioning. According to a statement read out on state media in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, the Type C-130 aircraft, which belongs to the Nigerian Air Force, was forced to land following an in-flight emergency situation. The 3 countries are members of a bloc, the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, which they created after quitting the West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS in 2023. The Sahel countries described the presence of the Nigerian plane as an unfriendly act and a violation of the airspace of Burkina Faso, vowing to collectively defend their airspace and territorial integrity. However, the Nigerian Air Force said the plane, which took off from Lagos, was on a ferry mission to Portugal.
Welcome back, people. Let's try to figure this. Because today, all that's happening, you might see it like a normal thing. But for real, this is not normal. This is not normal. The fact that the Nigerian military were detained in the country of the country of Burkina Faso, that is a serious concern. That is a serious concern. First of all, we have to know that all these are the military system. All these soldiers are the militaries. A military is just a military, no matter how country he or she comes from, because they might come to meet in one point, maybe fighting for something else. So at the same time, ECOWAS, Nigeria and Burkina Faso both belongs in ECOWAS in West Africa, whereby at this time they would have been working together maybe to stabilize their region, to prevent their people and to protect all the terrorism that is happening in West Africa. But things are happening in a different way, whereby today we see now these countries are fighting themselves, are fighting each other. It has come to the point where now it's not a war of the states, but the war of the military system. Now, first of all, it has been long since Nigeria and Burkina Faso has not been in a good relationship, since the Burkina Faso and Sahel countries decided to withdraw themselves from ECOWAS and declare themselves as a Sahel state, which is now a conclude of 3 countries, which today are all being led by military governments. And this brought a lot of concern in ECOWAS, because at that time, Nigerian President Tinubu was the chairman of ECOWAS, and he was not ready to allow this to happen. He was not ready to allow some people to withdraw from ECOWAS, because they believe that everyone had to work under the democratic institution, which was ECOWAS. But as you know, and as we know always, that this democracy has been there for so long. We've been working under these institutions, but nothing has been brought out like a change in our countries. West African countries have been all facing challenges, problems, droughts, hunger, terrorism, but the ECOWAS has been there. We know that ECOWAS has existed many years ago, but how has it been able to help or sort any problem that have been affecting all these countries in West Africa? That's the problem. That's the question that we have to ask first. So this issue of military of Nigeria being detained in Burkina Faso, first of all, this is a disgrace to the country of Nigeria, because I believe that maybe, because according to the statement of the Nigerian state, it is that this plane or this aircraft was heading to somewhere else, whereby it occurred some critical problems. And as you know, the laws of aviation, it has their own laws. Once an aircraft or airplane has detected any problem, it cannot continue moving. So that's why they had to to request an emergency landing, which they find themselves in Burkina Faso. But in Burkina Faso's airspace, because this was a Nigerian airplane or aircraft, and they're not in a good relationship, to them it was seen as a threat, because no country can allow any intruder just to enter their airspace without a permission, without any authorization. So for them to detain or to capture this aircraft, it was their right, because this is the law of the country. You cannot just violate the law just like that. You cannot just enter someone else's airspace without any permission, without any communication. So in Burkina Faso's view, this was just a threat, because this can happen in any country. In any country, first of all, before you enter any country's airspace, you must get you must get permission. You must be authorized. So this issue of them being detained, it was something that can happen in any country. So today we have seen these soldiers have been presented to court of court ya jeshi inaitwangaje. They have been presented to the martial court in Burkina Faso, and according to the statement, they are trying to say that these soldiers are going maybe to be taken to jail if they will be found guilty. If they will be found guilty, they are going to face life imprisonment. So, but other statements are saying that these soldiers were detained, yes, but after 2 days they were released and they returned back to Nigeria. So at this time, we all know that today Nigerian President Tinubu is being seen as a threat, is being seen as a disease in West Africa, not only in West Africa but across Africa, because this is one of the leaders today who is really today engaging with the foreigners, who is really today still engaging and associating with the French government and the French president every time, every day, even the point where Nigerians themselves are asking questions. What is the meaning of this relationship? Because many African countries today, they are trying to free themselves. They are trying to resist all this foreign influence. How comes Nigerian president is being seen in France and with the Emmanuel Macron each and every day? Because when you take a look at the history of Africa today, people are fighting so hard to make sure that they free themselves and they cut all this foreign influence so that they can be able to do their own things, just like other countries try to detain themselves, the country like from east, like China, India, and Russia. This helped them a lot. So we cannot continue speaking about the development, about the unity, if we are still engaging with the people from the West, because these people have been here in Africa for so long, but they have been trying so hard to make sure that Africa does not arise, Africa doesn't unite, Africa does not develop. For them to get a reason to come and influence in Africa, for them to come and continue exploiting African resources, they have to keep Africa down, they have to keep Africa poor, they have to keep Africa fighting. They sponsor crisis, terrorism, so that we can keep on fighting, so that they can get a space and time to sneak into African resources. So at this time, I believe that the country of Nigeria had to do something, because I've come across several videos of Nigerians themselves. They are coming out and they are crying out about their president. They are so depressed. They are tired about their president, because this president, at this time, Nigeria is a failed state. Nigeria is a failed government. We have seen just two months ago, Nigerians have been slaughtered. Thousands of Nigerians have been slaughtered, the Christians. But the country of Nigeria and the military system of this country failed to protect those people. It had nothing to do to protect the life of the people who were being killed every day. But today they have the energy to go and start to fight other people. Today Nigeria is declaring to go and invent the country of Burkina Faso. So how comes these people are not able to protect themselves, are not able to fight themselves, to solve their own problems, while they are so concerned to go and solve the problems of other people? This is unacceptable, and people are inside of Burkina Faso. People are so supporting all that is happening in Sahel, because if they just sit down and watch all that's happening without responding, then Nigeria is going to do a lot of things. It's going to disrupt all the peace that is in these countries. It's going to make a lot of mess in this country. So Burkina Faso at this, I think, and the leader of this country is right for all that he's doing. But if these people will not be found guilty, then maybe we can be happy to see them free. But when they find guilty, there is no otherwise. But they just have to face the law. At this time, we as Africans, we are not in a point of entertaining all this nonsense that have been happening in Africa for so long. Because this Tinubu and other African leaders, many of African leaders, are the people who have been playing around the life of Africans. These are the people who have been selling out our countries, our resources, our future. Take an example of the country of Tanzania. Just a few weeks ago, we have lost many people. 3,000 and above people have been killed. Reason being, there is just someone who is trying to fight to secure his position as a president. So they feel like they are so God sent. They feel like that they are so blessed. They are the only people who can govern these countries. Let's try to cut off this mentality, because African countries, we are trying to fight for the unity. And nobody is above the law. Nobody is so greater than anyone. Nobody is greater than the country. So people have to put aside their own interest or their personal interest and try to focus the interest of the people and their countries. We have some people who fought for this freedom that today African leaders, the greedy African leaders, are playing with. We have people who fight, who sacrifice their own life to fight for this. We have people like Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, who fight so hard to make sure that he free the country of Tanzania, which today some people are coming out to play with. They don't care what's all that's happening. As long as they secure their position, they're okay. So as Africans, this is the time that we have to stand tall and make sure that we stop all this that is happening by the people who feel themselves like they're so superior, they're so special than any other people. So the country of Burkina Faso, we are behind the country of Burkina Faso, because first of all, today you cannot come and convince anyone in Africa about the country of Burkina Faso, because this is one of the countries today in Africa which is giving an example of the good leadership. Today, the country of Burkina Faso's president Ibrahim Traore is one of the leaders today in the world, not only in Africa or Burkina Faso, who is trying to give a good example of the governance and the leadership. So all that we are watching people and African youths coming to do today, they are doing this because they got an example. They had someone who came and motivate them. He came out and tell us that we either fight or we remain slaves forever. And I don't believe if there is anyone who is ready today to go back to the slavery life. We were not there. We were not there when it happened. But through the history, through the stories, we know all that happened. And I don't think if today there is anyone who may like to go back to that life, because it was harsh, brutally, and very bad. So we are here to watch all that's happening. We are behind Burkina Faso and Ibrahim Traore, and Nigeria has to do something. Nigeria has to wake up. Nigeria was once the giant of Africa, but today is the one once misbehaving and showing the bad example to African governance. Tell me about the comment section. I'm so pissed off of these statements. So let's continue discussing in the comment section. Maybe bless watching from. I love and appreciate for you being here. You're doing great. Let's continue supporting and moving together as we achieve and support this agenda of African unity. We have to make sure that we liberate African continent. May be blessed and peace out.